Kinesiology 310 anatomical. Kinesiology, to be more specific. Spring 2021, how you living? Hope you guys are doing well. I hope you didn't just hear that big sound my computer made when a pop-up came on. Oh well. So, this is it, man. We have a week to go. Uh, when I say a week, I don't literally maybe mean a week, but just next week is finals. Yay! But when finals are over, it's yay. So this little short micro lecture is just to make sure we're all on the same page. Okay. So I'm going to get into some specifics and I'm going to get into some clarifications. But I think pretty much I haven't heard from you guys. I hear from a couple, but that's good. Maybe you got a grasp of the information and maybe all is well. So I'm going to try to look at it as a positive. Muscles can only pull. You have three kinds of muscles, right? You don't need to know this on the test, but I just want to remind you that in biology, you have three kinds of muscles. You have the smooth, which you can't control, and they're actin and myosin, all those little, so they're randomly spread out. The reason they randomly is so that any length they are, they have the same pull. You need to have some consistency with your pull for smooth muscle lining those arteries and veins mostly. But then you have skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle is striated, just like cardiac. Sorry, I'm going to go to cardiac and then we'll go to skeletal, the ones that are important to us. So cardiac is striated. In other words, everybody's lined up, actin and myosin, and the actin moves about the myosin. But again, you don't control it. So it has something in common with smooth. You don't control it, but it has something in common with skeletal, and that there's length tension changes there in terms of being stretched out and being shortened. Now, when a cardiac muscle like your heart gets stretched out, a lot of that is stored elastic stuff that rebounds. I think back from my phys days, I think that was called the Frank Starling mechanism, where the more the heart stretches out, the more it's going to want to return to its original shape. Thank you, stretchy properties of muscle. The ones we care about, not that the others aren't important, but the ones we really care about are the muscles that are involved in movement. And when I say movement, making you move, preventing you from move, speeding up your motion, slowing down your motion, keeping your motion at the same speed. That's going to come back when we get into our phases later. But the stuff that's responsible for moving all of the different joints that we had learned previously, okay? So, muscles can only pull. That's right. Muscles can only pull. They can't pull and push. I can push my hand, but that's not a muscle. My hand is not a muscle. I have muscles in my hand, but I'm pushing with the bones that are in my hand because there's muscles that are pulling in different ways, allowing my hand to push forward, okay? Bones can push, muscles can pull. So if muscles can pull on the bones, then the bones can therefore push on things, okay? So don't confuse those things. Muscles can only pull. If muscles could do both pull and push, man, we wouldn't need half the muscles in our body. You know, if my elbow flexors, which my bicep, my brachialis, my brachioradialis, if they could pull and push, why would I need the tricep and the anconeus? You know, I would only need one set. So it kind of shows my point that muscles can only pull. So we need muscles on the front side of the elbow and muscles on the back side of the elbow, and muscles on the front side of the wrist and muscles on the back side of the wrist, on the ulnar side of the wrist and the radial side on the wrist. We need muscles in every direction of motion. Okay, so when you look at a person on the poster board and you see all those muscles, and they're everywhere, front, back, outside, inside, encapsulated by muscles because they can only pull. All right, so then we segue into, well, if muscles can only pull, what are the different options of their pull? Win, lose, draw, right? A muscle can, well, first of all, what does it mean for a muscle to do a job, to work? And that's the concept of contraction. And what does contraction work mean? Just like when you get up in the morning and you go to work, you go do a job. So that's why I use those terms synonymously. You know, working, jobs, contraction. It's stuff that you do that's your job above rest, above the weekend, above when you get off and you get to go home and relax and watch the NFL draft and be like, who is that player that the Saints just drafted? You know, it's so contraction. It's like a keyword, man. When you hear contraction, it's a muscle pulling above rest, doing a job, preventing, causing, slowing down, speeding up, maintaining speed, but it's doing something above rest. Muscles pull all the time, but they don't contract all the time. Contraction means work. Work means doing a job above rest, right? Your body has basal metabolic activity going on all the time, but that doesn't mean you're working all the time, right? I mean, again, I'm trying to explain the difference here. That I could sustain rest for 24 hours, but I can't sustain work for 24 hours. My bicep can pull at rest all day long, but my bicep cannot contract all day long, do a job all day long. That kind of makes sense. So contraction is very special, very specific for muscles doing a job above resting tone. And when those muscles get innervated, the nerve calls, just like you maybe get called to do a job, come into work. Let's say you don't have a standard 9 to 5. You work when there's jobs to get done. You may get a call and say, hey, we need you to come in and do a job. That's what the nerve innervates the muscle for. Hey man, we need you to do a job. We need you to move this weight. We need you to speed it up. Now we need to keep it the same speed. Now we got to slow it down. Now we got to speed it up the other way. Now we got to keep it the same speed. Now we got to slow it down. The nerve is communicating what those muscles need to do their job. Okay? So when a muscle does a job, it really has 3 types of jobs that it can do. 3 main types, and we can break it down into subtypes. It can shorten while trying to shorten above resting tone. It can shorten while it's doing a job. It can bring 2 ends of a bone. It could bring 2 ends of different bones closer together while it's working above rest doing a job, doing what it is trying to do, because muscles can only pull. When you're pulling something, it's trying to bring 2 ends closer together. We call that concentric jobs, concentric contraction, concentric work, all synonymous. Shortening while trying to shorten above resting tone. Well, another way a muscle can do a job is to prevent motion. You know, muscles do a great job at stabilizing, preventing motion. My cervical extensors right now are doing a job preventing my head from flexing. Why? Because I have more mass in the front of my cervical vertebra than in the back, so gravity is trying to flex me the whole time. Okay? So my cervical extensors are doing a job. And that job, even though there's no motion, involves motion. It's preventing me from flexing. Thank you, cervical extensors. I owe you. That's isometric. Isometric contraction, isometric work, an isometric job. Okay? I can't, that's why I have to rest. I have to give those cervical extensors some time to recover. I literally can't stay upright for 24 hours. Now, over the course of time, these cervical extensors develop fatigue resistant ability, but that's why you get tension headaches and, you know, man, my neck's kind of, those muscles need a break. Those muscles need rest. Okay? Now, eccentric contraction, eccentric jobs, eccentric work. That is where a muscle is still trying to shorten, but the muscle is being lengthened. That's the key word that I was looking for, while trying to shorten. These things happen all the time in the real world. I can lengthen a rubber band while the rubber band is still trying to shorten. The rubber band cannot lengthen itself. Muscles cannot lengthen themselves. If I magically just Harry Potter pulled out the bicep and laid it on the table and said, eccentric contract bicep, and the bicep would be like, first of all, I'm not inside your body, and that's weirding me out. But second of all, I'm not equipped to have the mechanism to lengthen myself. I have to be lengthened. And most of the time, muscles are being lengthened because of weights. Gravity, like say in the bicep example, gravity is trying to extend my elbow. So therefore, my bicep pulling in the opposite direction can be lengthened by the weight of the dumbbell or my forearm. Okay? So muscles can be lengthened while trying to shorten above resting tone. That's what we call eccentric contraction, eccentric work. Okay? Now, within those concentric and eccentrics, that's where I think I can offer some clarification. Because sometimes I just take for granted that people have had physics in high school, college, and sometimes positives and negatives kind of get confusing. So when I put up this diagram in one of the past lectures, okay, I said the 6 phases of a full range of motion, and I had like speeding up, constant speed, slow down. That's when you're doing an exercise, not like a fast ballistic movement where everything's about speeding up and slowing down. Like jumping jacks, you don't want to do jumping jacks and nice and slow and good, right? You're trying to do as many as you can. But most exercises, especially those in the weight room, you're going to have periods of speeding up the motion, constant speed of the motion, slowing down the motion. So I put those: speed up, constant speed, slow down, speed up, constant speed, slow down. But what I want to clarify is when I put these positives and negatives in mechanics, that's well, in direction, positive is up and negative is down. Okay, now positive and negative could mean other things for other vector quantities. It could be positive velocity and negative velocity and positive acceleration, negative acceleration. That's not what we're talking about here. We're literally just talking about up and down. So in this case, let's see. Let's say it was a bench press, okay? Well, speeding up, going up. So let's say it's the curl. We'll stay consistent with the curl, okay? So pretend I have a weight in my hand. For me, it would probably be, 100, 110 pounds. Brad, are you telling stories again? Yeah, all right, Buck, yeah, I know. Okay, 10 pounds. But if you think about it, a full range of motion in basic terms is going to be up, then down. But in upper level graduate terms, we got to think about that. Well, if it went from not moving to moving, it had to speed up. And if I'm doing this exercise slow and controlled, then I want to keep it flexing at the same speed. And there's a reason for that, is so that our muscles can actually do the weight realistically. Well, what speeds up must slow down. So eventually, I'm going to have to slow down the flexion. I sped up the flexion. I kept the flexion going, and then I'm going to slow down the flexion. The whole half of the whole range of motion is flexion, but there's a speed up phase, a constant speed phase, and a slow down phase. No different than when you're driving on your car and you're at a stop sign, and there's another stop sign down the road. You're going to speed up your car, you're going to hit cruise control, and then you're going to slow down. Same different. Same different. That's very clever, Brian. It's the same thing. It's the same concept. Now, once I slow down the flexion, I'm going to speed up the extension. Constant speed of extension, slow down the extension, and that brings me back to where I started. The car analogy would be, make sure there's no cars on the road. Speeding up in one direction, like say let's say a Cartesian, but let's say it's positive is this way. We know up and down, positive, negative, but let's say up is this way. Speed up in the positive, cruise control in the positive, slow down in the positive. There's nobody around, so I could put it in reverse. Speed up in the negative, constant velocity in the negative, slow down in the negative. Okay, so if those positives and negatives are kind of throwing you off, just replace it with going up or going down. So in other words, speed up, going up, constant speed, going up, slow down, going up. Speed up, going down, constant speed, going down, slow down, going down. Now, that segues into the plyometric sequence. Why do I teach you this stuff is so that you can see where in the exercise the muscles have to work more. Because here is a secret. When I'm curling 10 pounds, my muscles don't feel 10 pounds of torque. And I know that a force isn't a torque, perpendicular distance in moment arms, who cares? My elbow flexors will not feel the same external resistance throughout the entire range of motion with a dumbbell. It's going to get easier up here, and it's going to get harder down here. If anybody's ever done preacher curls, you know what I'm talking about, right? Where it's like, then you could kind of take a breath, and then you could lower it down. You're like, oh my God. Oh, okay, thank goodness. There are periods in the range of motion where it feels harder. And guess why it feels harder? Because it is harder. Because your muscles are responsible for slowing down the motion one way and then changing your direction and speeding up the motion the other way. Your muscles have to be greater than the resistance, than the weight. That's plyometrics. Plyometrics isn't the entire eccentric followed by the entire concentric. It's only that window of slowing down the motion through eccentrics followed by changing your direction to speed up the motion in the other direction. That's plyometrics. So a few ways to determine plyometrics is you could do it through logical elimination. Just where in the exercise does it feel harder? Doing a squat is the hardest part when you come up at the top or when you're down at the bottom? Down at the bottom. Good Lord. Put me down sometimes when you're, trying to max, you're just at the bottom and you're just like, oh my God, please. It feels harder because it is harder. Okay? Changing direction because your muscles did it is harder than changing direction when the machine or the weight can do it. What I mean by that is when I'm curling and I'm flexing and I speed up the flexion, constant velocity of flexion, gravity can change my direction up here. I could turn off all my muscles and gravity could be like, whoop. Gravity can slow me down and gravity can speed me up. Gravity can't do that down here. Gravity can't slow me down and then speed me up. So another way to see it is if you can understand what can't change my direction, then you know that your muscles have to change your direction. Same thing for like a bench press example, right? Gravity can slow me down and then speed me up when I'm at the top. I don't need my muscles for that. But you know what gravity can't do? Gravity can't slow me down at the bottom and speed me up, right? We're assuming I'm not going to bounce the son of a gun off my chest. My muscles have to work more than the weight to slow me down and then to speed me up. Plyometric sequence of muscles, okay? And the special thing about plyometrics is that's where the most damage to muscles is going to be because they're working more and because in that eccentric phase, that's where things are going to be pulled apart. You don't fray a rope by the rope shortening. You fray a rope when it's pulled apart. That's when you pop things, is when you pull them apart when they're being lengthened. You pop a rubber band when it's being lengthened. A rubber band has never, ever, ever, ever popped while it was shortening. A rubber band always pops when it's being lengthened. Same thing for muscles. In micro damage and macro damage. Micro damage being the little cilia that get damaged, the stretchy components. I think in phys they call it Z-line streaming. Don't quote me on that. It's been a long time since I got my master's in phys. Macro damage is literally you're doing an exercise and the whole tendon, the whole stretchy stuff goes pow. And for your bicep, it'll roll up like a big knot up here, like a window curtain. So that's clarifying this. Now, let me end with a couple examples. Okay. Common examples. You can go into the weight room and do these. Take a look at this. Okay. And the muscle group is highlighted in red. Who are those muscles? Who cares? We're going to learn them in biomechanics. But they pull in the direction of horizontal adduction. Why would I need horizontal adductors in this exercise? Why? Because the machine is trying to horizontally abduct you. Right? The machine is trying to do this. How do I know? Well, there's a few clues here. But one of them is, look at the picture where his hands are closer together, and that weight stack is up. That meant he made the weight stack go up. Now, the pulleys redirect the forces into the horizontal, but if he made the weight stack go up, that meant he made his hands get closer together. That means the weight stack is trying to go down, thanks planet Earth, and the machine is trying to make his hands move away from each other. Okay? So if he holds that position with his hands close together, that's isometric work. His muscles are doing a job above rest, maintaining that position, and he cannot do that all day. He can't. So if he goes from hands closer together to hands further apart, I know from my kinesiology equation that the only way the horizontal adductors can be responsible for horizontal adduction is through eccentric contraction. Now here's where the phases come in. None of you are clangers. None of you are just going to pow, right? You want to control the speed of the horizontal abduction, and that's where your muscles come into play. So what's going to happen, think of it like this. Your horizontal adductors, if they keep tying the machine, like pulling with the same influence, your hands will never move until they get too tired and then they can't. So your muscles have to let off. Your muscles have to purposefully pull less than the weight to let the weight speed you up. Your muscles are going to let the weight be greater so that the machine can speed you up at the rate your muscles allow them to. Speed up the horizontal abduction, constant speed of horizontal abduction. Now your muscles are actually doing the weight. Because think about it. I know that my muscles have to be doing that weight stack, whatever is going up and down, because if the muscles started pulling more, I would slow down. And if the muscles kept pulling less, I would keep speeding up. The only way to keep it going the same speed is to tie. So that's why slow and controlled. I'm not saying always do slow and controlled, but that's why slow and controlled is so important, because at constant speeds, you're actually doing the weight that you think you're doing. And there's going to be periods where you're going to be doing less, and there's going to be periods where you're doing more. And anything that involves less or more has the potential for imbalances. You future therapists, just keep that in mind. Speeding up, constant, now slowing down. Now the weight stack can't slow me down. Well, it could if I literally let the weights clang, right? But I'm not a clanger. So if I want to keep muscle tension engaged, my muscles need to slow down the horizontal abduction through eccentric work, change my direction, and speed up the horizontal adduction through concentric work. There's my plyometric sequence. I know this because it's harder to change that direction here than it is there. I know it because once I get it going, the machine can slow me down and speed me up. The machine can't slow me down and speed me up. And again, even if you're like, well, the machine could slow you down. All right, great, awesome. Now make it speed you up. You can't thought process circles around this. It is what it is. Your muscles slow you down and speed you up in this scenario. Now, let me show you what's cool about this machine. We can have another scenario. But look at this. The machine's doing the same thing, but because you flipped around, now instead of the machine trying to do this to you, the machine is trying to do that to you. Different external force trying to cause different motions is going to create different agonists for that. It's that simple. Okay? So now the external forces are trying to horizontally adduct me, so now I need horizontal abductors. Concentric, when the motion matches what I'm trying to do in my muscles. Eccentric, when the motion that my muscles are doing is opposite than the motion of the machine's trying to do. Isometric, when there's no motion, they're tying. So maybe do this one. I did the other one for you. Maybe do this one as a practice. Press pause and see if you could see speeding up, constant, slowing down, speeding up, constant, slowing down. Okay. Cool. All right. And then finally the stretching concepts. Okay. Super duper easy. It again, think of the rubber band. Okay. As my fingers get further apart, the rubber band gets longer. As my fingers get closer together, the rubber band gets shorter. As my fingers get further apart, the rubber band pulls more. As my fingers get closer, the rubber band pulls less. I have rubber bands in the front of my wrist and in the back of my wrist. I call those rubber bands wrist flexors in the front, wrist extensors in the back, because they pull in those directions. Wrist flexors are going to naturally get shorter anytime I have flexion. That's it, because this finger is going to get closer to that finger. So if this finger gets closer to that finger when I flex, this finger is going to get further apart from that finger when I flex. And when I extend, this finger gets closer to that finger when I extend. So guess what? This finger gets further away from that finger when I extend. So if stretching is bringing the 2 points of a muscle further away from each other, by extending my wrist, I'm naturally going to lengthen the flexors. And when I flex the wrist, I'm naturally going to lengthen the extensors. So how would I stretch the wrist flexors? By extending, by being extended. How would I stretch the wrist extensors? By flexing, by being flexed. It's that simple. How would I stretch the left lateral cervical benders? By bringing my right ear to my right shoulder. Fingers got further apart. How would I stretch the right lateral? Bending to the left. How would I stretch my cervical extensors? Flexing my cervical vertebra. How would I stretch my cervical flexors? That's it, man. That's it. And what's cool is that it actually brings back our motion and position concepts. You know, in other words, they're not wasted. I didn't ask you to learn that for nothing. How would I stretch the hip flexors? By extending my hip and being in an extended position. Okay, that's simple. I hope this helped, guys, and hit me up, and good luck with finals. Be well. You can do it. Come see me, Bucky's.